Hello. Today I'd like to go over my workflow for taking a photo that we received from a client, doing the initial editing, and the whole way through pulling that into Lightburn and burning it onto a Slate coaster. We're using standard 100 by 100 Slate coasters. We do spray ours with a polyacrylic to give it more of a wet look than a dry. Main reason for that is with the clear acrylic spray, it makes it look wet, which also means it makes it darker. So whenever you burn with a laser, that's going to pop the colors more of the black and white. It's going to make it more crisp, and the image will pop much more. If we didn't spray it with a polyacrylic, you're going to end up with a kind of a matte gray coaster, and the image, while it'll look really good, it's just not going to be quite as vivid because there's not going to be as much contrast between the gray and the burned whites as there would be if you spray it to make it look more like a wet coaster. We do not spray our coasters black like a lot of people do. I just think the black spray paint makes them look artificial. So that's a personal choice. If I sprayed it black, it would probably make the image pop even more. I just don't think it's worth that extra step into artificial appearance. So I'm happy with what we get with the polyacrylic. As far as tools go, I'm going to use Affinity from Canva as my image editing software and Lightburn for the laser control. And we have a Haotian 100 watt MOPA laser that we're going to burn this on. We used to have the Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo, which as you can see down here at the bottom, I still have them installed. I've moved most of my workflows over to the new Affinity app. Affinity Designer and Photo were nice. You pay once, you own them. It wasn't a subscription service like you had with Photoshop, and you have almost all the features of Photoshop. Affinity was recently released. Apparently Canva bought the Affinity name or the Affinity products. I don't know if they bought the Serif company that had made Affinity or what, but now Canva has released Affinity. My understanding is it's a free application. You can use it for free. You will have to create a Canva account, but it doesn't have to be a paid account. My wife likes Canva. She uses it quite a bit in our business, so she actually has a paid Canva account with a premium level. So we get access to all of the new AI features that there are in the Canva or the Affinity application. We are going to use the background remover, which actually has, from what I've seen, works really well. But if you don't have the Premier account, you can still use the Canva application of Affinity for free and follow along with this tutorial. You just might have to erase the background manually if you want the background erased. So what are we going to do? Our client sent us this photo of a dog. She had already removed the background, but it's now white. This is a JPEG that she sent us. It's 72 dots per inch. It's only about 200K. But it is a clean, well-lit image of the dog. We are going to have to remove the background to get rid of the white. We're going to have to increase the contrast between this white on the chest, because we do want to notice on the coaster, we want this white patch to stand out pretty well. And right now the shoulders and the chest are really similar as far as the grays in a coaster engrave go. So we're going to use the dodge tool to desaturate the white a little bit, and we're going to use the burn tool to darken the brown fur here a little bit. The second thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to accentuate the edges of the ears here. We're going to do that by painting a layer, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We're just going to paint a bit of a glow in some areas around the ears to try to make those look natural, not too artificial, and still have them stand out, because with them being this dark, when we go to burn this on a coaster, if we don't do that, they're just going to blend right into the coaster. And finally, you'll see whenever we go to convert this to black and white, this red is going to do some really weird conversion, but there is a simple way around that in Affinity. So again, the workflow will be edit the image in Affinity to the point where it's black and white, its background's removed, it has a little bit of a touch-up. Export that as a PNG, import the PNG into Lightburn, And then in Lightburn, we will still have to adjust the gamma a bit, but otherwise that should be about it. set up the settings in Lightburn, burn the thing, and see what we come up with. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use that AI feature to remove this white background. For that, again, we only have access to this because she has a premium account. If we didn't, you'd have to erase the background manually. So I'm just going to go into Pixel, remove background. This only takes a few seconds. And again, from what I've seen, this does a really good job. So you can see it, really nice background removal. That's now gone. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a copy of this layer. So I'm going to change the name of this one to Original. Then I'm going to copy that with a Control-C and a Control-V, turn the original off, and rename this one to Modified. That way I can always flip back to the original and refer to it if I need to. Okay, so in the modified version, first thing we want to do is increase this contrast down here. So I'm going to go ahead and find the burn and dodge tools. So that's this adjustment brush palette. I'm going to choose the dodge brush. That looks like a decent size. So we're at 200 pixels on this photo. As you can see, whenever I highlight things, it just lightens things up a little bit. Our opacity is 86%, 100% flow, and a nice soft 41% on our brush hardness. That's going to give us some nice, very faded edges, because we don't want it to look like we did something in MS Paint. We want these to be well blended. So on that, I'm just going to paint over this area of the chest to lighten it up a little bit extra. And really, that's about all I want to do with the dodge brush. So it's now a brighter chest. I'm going to switch the brush now over to the burn brush. So you'll see it when I mouse over things. It's going to make things darker, but keep the same textures and actually maybe even enhance the contrast a little bit in places. This will work well because we can control it here. It doesn't matter if we hit the tie a little bit. It's really not going to matter. And we don't want to do anything to the face because we want to keep it as natural as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly burn around the browns here. Again, we're just trying to boost that contrast a bit. So now there's significantly more contrast between the chest and the shoulders, which is exactly what we're looking for. That's all we had to do there. Now I want to do the accentuation on the tips of the ears. To be able to tell what we're doing, though, I'm going to have to put two new layers in here. I'm going to click on the original. In Affinity, whenever you are on a layer and you create a new layer, it'll create above the one you're in. So I want two layers between our original and our modified, because I want them to be behind the modified layer, which is the photo of the dog. I'm going to add two new pixel layers. The first pixel layer, so the back pixel layer, I just want to fill with black. So I'm going to go to the flood fill tool, make sure I'm on the black color, pour that in there. Now I'll be able to see when I'm accentuating the edges of the ears. So now I'm going to go to the next layer up, and we're going to go to the airbrush tool, and well, the brush tool. And so with the brush tool, we're using a pretty small brush, low flow, low opacity. So we're going with 50% opacity, 65% flow, and 17% hardness. We want this to be really soft because we're just trying to get an edge. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, but we're trying to get an edge around the ears that will translate pretty well into the coaster. Now these light spots are already going to come out on the coaster fairly well. Where we're going to have a problem is here where we're getting to the tips, where it's pretty dark at the edge. So I'm just going to start bringing a little bit of a glow, and I've found that doing it by hand makes it not so artificial looking. So it's not so even like you selected the layer and just expanded that selection or did an outer glow. I will say over here it got a little thick, so I'm going to redo that real quick. I don't want it to be quite that thick, but we do have to have it thick enough that you'll be able to see it on the coaster. And the other note here is we don't really have to do the whole thing. We just have to get where it's going to be dark on the edges. So like about here, this is going to start being redefined again. In this area, it's going to blend into the coaster pretty heavily. So I think that should be good on that ear. Now we'll go over to this ear. Kind of the same thing. In through here, it's going to be fine. Right about here is where I expect it's going to kind of crap out and fade into the coaster. And it's up to you, obviously, how much you do here and where you stop, or if you even want to do this. I'm only doing that because I don't want the dog to look like it doesn't have ear tips. Okay, so adjustment-wise, that's really all we need to do. I'm going to go ahead and delete the black layer now because we don't need it anymore. And we're going to merge the modified layer down into the new ear tips layer. So I'm just going to go to Pixel, Merge, Down. So now we have this pixel layer is the photo of the dog with the highlights on its ears. Final step is to convert this to black and white. So I'm going to go over to the Adjustments panel and find black and white. Where'd it go? Okay, black and white is here. I have the pixel layer selected that we want. I'm going to go with default, and you'll see whenever I did that, not only is the dog really bright, which we can adjust that using gamma over in Lightburn, but the red, which was a relatively dark bow, just completely washed out to white. Well, happily in the black and white conversion or adjustment panel here, we can change these sliders to affect how colors are moved into the black and white space. So if I decrease this red, since that's what color that bow was, you can see that I can really darken up that bow and bring back the contrast between the chest and the shoulders at the same time, because the dog was kind of copper colored. Now with the copper color, there's also a lot of yellows in there, so I can further enhance that by dropping the yellow a little bit as well. So here we have really nice contrast in the chest, excellent contrast in the bow, so I think that's going to translate very well. Can't really see it much here, but we do still have the highlights on the tips of the ears. We haven't really touched the face other than a little bit of the color balancing here, so that should translate well. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this. Now the last thing I want to do here is, since I'm burning this onto a coaster, I want to really be able to control the size of the dog a little better than without getting all this extra outline or blank space behind it. So I'm going to select the dog with a little bit of gap, not nearly as much, or a little bit of buffer. And I'm going to do Control-Shift-C so I get everything. And then new image from clipboard. So this image is just the dog with all the changes that we've made. Obviously, if you want to save this one as a .af so that you can come back to it, I would highly recommend that. This one is kind of a throwaway, strictly just to export. So now we're going to do that. We're going to export it as a PNG file, and we just want it to be a regular PNG. We're leaving the dimensions the same as they are because this came in as a JPEG, so it's just dots. We'll convert the size once we get it into Lightburn, and we're going to let Lightburn do the dithering. So I'm going to go ahead and hit export here, and we're going to call this import.png. Okay, on that note, we're done in Affinity. Now we're going to move over to Lightburn, and we can import the image here. So I'm just going to go to File, Import, load the import PNG, and you'll see we have the dog. Now we're using a 210mm by 210mm lens on our Haotian laser, or Haotian, sorry, I keep saying that incorrectly. On that lens we can get 4 coasters, and I have a template set up, a jig, for aligning those. This dog right now, as we imported, it's going to be 438mm tall, way bigger than we want. We want to lock the aspect ratio and change this to 90mm, so we have a little bit of a buffer. Then with the dog selected, I'm going to pick one of my slots that we engrave to and center it. And from there, I just want to move it down a little bit so it's sitting closer to the bottom edge of the coaster instead of right up at the top. Alright, so right now this looks good as far as its placement goes, because that'll be really nice on the coaster, taking up most of the coaster. The problem is, if I burn this as is, it would be so light on the coaster, it's just going to look like a white outline of a dog. So we really have to adjust the gamma significantly here, and it's really surprising how dark this is going to have to look to come out nicely on the coaster. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people probably don't get right away. So if I click on the image, right click and say adjust the image, I do want to invert the display to see more what it's going to look like on a black background. And oh, that looks great. Yeah, no, if you zoom in, we're getting so many dots here on the shoulders, that's going to turn out to white. That's going to be white whenever you get it onto the coaster. Obviously the chest's going to be pure white. There's not going to be much difference between these two areas once you get onto a coaster unless we adjust it. So I'm going to go into the gamma adjustment, and I'm going to pull this up, clear up to about 2.2. And that's more what you should expect to see. This is more appropriate on a coaster to get an image that's going to look good. You want significant gaps between the dots to get a medium color. So here, there's plenty of dots in the white chest to really make it pop. There's few enough in the shoulders that it's going to be a nice medium gray. The bow is going to be a nice dark bow with defined trees on it. That looks good. We have enough definition here that you're getting the wetness on the tip of the nose and the sides of the nose and even into the one nostril. Now in the original image, you can't really see both nostrils, so I don't expect there to be both nostrils really well defined. And if we want to try to define them better, by the time you get down to this point, you're going to be back to mostly white again. So I'm going to keep that at 2.2. That's not a magical setting. You really just have to mess around until you see the number of dots that look about right. And that takes some experience. Now that said, I do have a nice outline of dots around the tips of this ear, as well as around the tip of this ear. So I think those are going to look really good. And I believe that should be about correct. So I'm going to say OK here. And yes, as dark as this looks, this is probably going to appear pretty darn good once it translates onto that sprayed coaster. So on that note, we're going to look at the settings real quick. The settings for this layer are, obviously it's an image. We're going with, again, I'll note, a Haotian 100 watt MOPA laser. We're going 1200 millimeters per second with 60% power. We're going a frequency of 400 kilohertz with 10 nanosecond Q pulse width. We're doing 453 dots per inch with Jarvis image mode. Yeah, Jarvis or Stucky are probably both fine. Those are the ones I see most people using, and they're also the ones I've used the most for dithering images to have them come out photorealistic. We do want this to be a negative image, so it's going to work out on a black background. Instead of burning black, it's going to burn the whites. So I'm going to say OK to that. We'll look at at a preview, and yeah, this looks about like what we'd expect to see to get a good coaster burn. On that note, I'm going to switch to a different camera, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, I have the laser hooked up. As you can see, we still have the dog looking really dark on the screen, but again, with the preview, that's about what we want. So I'm going to say OK here. Still have the settings at 1260. We have our laser set up next to us. We'll look at that in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And if I look over at our laser, we're getting a nice definition of the white patch on the chest. Shoulders are a nice medium gray. This looks like it should turn out to be a pretty nice burn. I'm just going to let this go and we'll talk some more at the end. Okay, so overall I think that turned out really well. We have the nice definition in the chest. The bow looks great. You can see every Christmas tree on it. You got the little definitions of the ears while they still maintain their characteristic black color overall. So I would call that a success. Hopefully this helps someone out, and if nothing else, it'll help me remember how to do this in 6 months when someone else requests something like this. Thanks for watching.